Governor Hochul is forcing yet another tax onto the backs of hardworking New Yorkers. Over 400,000 people ride the subway every single day without paying. And yet Governor Hochul wants to tax the cops, teachers, firefighters, nurses, union workers heading south of 60th Street to keep New York City running instead of forcing the MTA to do their job. These fare beaters cost the MTA over $700 million a year. Yet Kathy Hochul wants to charge hardworking New Yorkers $2,500 a year just for the privilege to commute to work. This while she is spending billions of dollars of taxpayer money to provide free housing, clothing, education, health care, and food to illegal immigrants in New York City. Our hardworking constituents should not have to foot the bill for Kathy Hochul's inept, incompetent, feckless leadership and her unwillingness to take on the MTA and its waste, fraud, abuse, corruption, and mismanagement. The governor should do her job instead of punishing residents of New York for trying to do theirs. We will keep fighting every step of the way as we have to stop this scandal. We have introduced legislation in this Congress to block congestion pricing. We have sent a letter just last week to President-elect Trump for the purpose of repealing the authorization that was granted by the Biden administration to New York and the MTA for this scam. And we will fight every way we can through the executive branch, through the legislative branch, and through the courts to stop this scam from taking effect and hurting hardworking New Yorkers. So with that, I want to introduce my colleagues who have led in this fight, starting with Congressman Anthony D'Esposito from Long Island.
Well, thank you, Mike, and it's great to be joined by colleagues from throughout New York this afternoon. But I really wish that we didn't have to be here. When you think about the failed leadership of Kathy Hochul, you think about the continued overreach of New York State and the legislature, whether it's cashless bail and criminal justice reform, whether it's taking away local zoning rights from villages and towns, whether it's clean slate, whether it is congestion pricing, the one thing that they all have in common is that Kathy Hochul continues to screw New Yorkers. We're faced here with an opportunity to speak up and be heard. My colleagues and I have been extremely vocal from day one when talking about congestion pricing. You see, the MTA has used hardworking New Yorkers and those from the surrounding states as their ATM for far too long. When you talk about the MTA needing resources, they should look in the mirror. They are one of the most mismanaged agencies that this state has to offer. They spend billions of dollars a year just to manage their debt. They've spent nearly $1 billion letting fare beaters ride trains and buses and subways. The governor has put almost $3 billion in this year's budget to fund migrants and food and cell phones and iPads. So instead of talking about getting the MTA on board and correcting their mismanagement, Kathy Hochul doesn't think there's a problem. So what does she do? She digs into the pockets of hard-working people from New York. And you heard from Congressman Lawler, all of us here have introduced legislation. We've utilized our various committees of jurisdiction, whether it's the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee or others, to hold the state and the MTA accountable. Back home locally, both supervisors from Nassau and Suffolk are joining in lawsuits to sue the MTA and the state of New York. Folks, this is not a partisan issue. In fact, I would argue that Kathy Hochul may be one of the most ineffective governors the state of New York has ever seen. She has managed to not only anger conservative Republicans, but she's also angered Democrats and independents. Why? Because she doesn't understand that when she makes a mistake, she can change course. Instead, she doubles down and continues to take money out of the pockets of hardworking people. So I am truly thankful to have colleagues that are going to continue to fight this fight. And we are going to do that. We are going to be heard from every corner, not only here in the nation's capital, but back home in the Empire State, to make sure that Kathy Hochul knows that this must stop. It's not about a pause that was done for some election scam. This should be never. No congestion pricing, no tax to enter below 60th Street. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Congressman Diaz-Pasito. I'd now like to introduce another champion on this issue, batting Kathy Hochul's commuter tax, the Congresswoman from Staten Island, Nicole Malliotakis.
To people that we don't even represent either, people that live in New Jersey and other parts in the tri-state area. Congestion pricing is a scam. It is a cash grab. It is the MTA's latest attempt to fill what is a black hole, and it never ends. No matter how much money we give in federal dollars to the MTA, it's never enough. And no matter how much they raise our tolls and fares, it just seems to never be enough. And that is because it is a mismanaged entity. And we refuse to go along with this governor's plan, and we will fight it tooth and nail. I'm part of a lawsuit. There are multiple lawsuits. And we believe strongly that the MTA has violated federal law. There's something called the NEPA process. The Biden administration has loved to use NEPA process to stop everything. But yet when it comes to this first in the nation tolling program, all of a sudden, NEPA doesn't apply. And they rubber stamped the state's congestion pricing plan without requiring a full and thorough environmental impact study. And not only that, this proposal actually shifts traffic. It doesn't cut traffic. It doesn't reduce traffic. It just shifts it to our communities in the outer boroughs, in the Hudson Valley, Long Island, the communities that are outside of the zone. And you know what? They're working middle class communities, oftentimes minority communities as well. And so they're shifting the pollution, and they're shifting the traffic, and they're shifting the congestion, all so they can make money. That is what is this about. And you know what? The governor even admitted it. She said we need to bring it back because we need money. And you know what? The thing is, it's never enough. And so we as lawmakers need to scrutinize every federal penny that the MTA receives, because this is an inefficient, mismanaged organization that keeps taking from the taxpayer, keeps taking from my constituents, and we have had enough. And I'll also just point out that today happens to be the 60th anniversary of the Verrazano Bridge. What started as a very low toll bridge is now upwards of $20. That's what's going to happen here. She's saying she's doing us a favor because now it's going to be $9 instead of her original $15. Only Kathy Hochul would call a toll that is zero today, going to $9, a tax cut. It is a disgrace, and we will fight it tooth and nail until this proposal is gone for good. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman Malliotakis. Now I'd like to introduce another champion on this issue, great congressman from Long Island, Nicole Malliotakis.
Mike, thanks for your leadership on this issue. You've been fighting for a long time on it. $2,250 is what it'll cost the average commuter to get in and out of work in Manhattan and the boroughs for this commuter tax. It's abhorrent. It's unaffordable. Our constituents can't afford it. I have members here who represent Westchester, Nassau, Staten Island, Suffolk County. Nothing unites us more than fighting Kathy Hochul's terrible policies. Nothing helps unite our constituents more on politics than fighting Kathy Hochul's terrible policies. You heard before, Kathy Hochul wants to send $5 billion into the 5 boroughs for migrants, hotels, and healthcare, taking from suburban schools, infrastructure, raising our taxes. This new tax is going to hurt us even more, and it's going to go to things that we don't use. It's going to go to the MTA. These commuters drive in and out. It's not going to make their drive easier. It's going to go fund other systems they're not using. This is inequitable. That's something that we shouldn't have. Under one-party Democrat rule in New York State leads the nation in 2 dubious categories. We have the highest effective tax rate of any state in the nation, and we have the highest out-of-state migration than any state in the nation. Those 2 things are linked. That tough economic environment is the reason so many of our constituents are leaving. This commuter tax will only add to that. $2,250 should not be extracted from suburban motorists' pockets every day to ensure that Kathy Hochul can have her bloated MTA. We stand here strong in opposition to it. It's a shame there's just 4 Republicans here. We should have suburban Democrats here with us too, fighting Kathy Hochul, saying on behalf of their constituents, this isn't fair. But the fight starts here with the 4 of us. Hopefully it will continue to grow. Again, I want to thank my good friend Mike Lawler for his leadership on this issue. God bless.
Before we take any questions, it's been noted that Governor Hochul may be down in Washington tomorrow. And if she is, we certainly welcome the opportunity to sit down with her and discuss this boneheaded plan that she has put forth. And to get her to understand that we are going to fight tooth and nail to kill him. And so she is certainly welcome if she's here in Washington, D.C., with Republicans poised to have the majority in the House, the Senate, and President Trump coming back into office. She shouldn't just meet with Democrats. She should come meet with us. She's welcome to do so. And with that, any questions?
I'll ask a question. In terms of kind of the procedural here, obviously we have this January 20th deadline in some sense. In what ways do you think it's possible, if Herald actually goes through with this and this gets enacted, that Trump could possibly come in with you? But in what other avenues? I know you're pursuing legislation. I know you're hoping the courts step in, but do you think Trump can unilaterally do that?
Look, I think, number one, as Congresswoman Malliotakis pointed out, the Biden administration approved this without doing a full environmental review. And I do believe President Trump and his administration would have the authority to revoke those approvals. It was not complete. And so we certainly, in our letter, urged the president to do so. I know he has publicly stated his opposition to congestion pricing and this scam that Kathy Hochul has put forth. And as a lifelong New Yorker, he certainly understands the impact it will have on Manhattan, on business, on commuters, on the taxpayers of New York. And the fact is that this plan should be revoked, and the authorization of it should be revoked by the federal government, the Department of Transportation, and the EPA. And certainly, my view is the president should move ahead with that and let Kathy Hochul sue. Let her go to court and try to get the courts to weigh in her favor. But that being said, if we have to take legislative action, we will. The bill that I had introduced along with Josh Gottheimer last year would strip away funding for the MTA so long as they have congestion pricing in place. It's a scam. They are seeking to raise $1 billion to borrow $15 billion. New York State's budget has increased by $61 billion in 4 years. For Kathy Hochul in New York State government leaders, Andrea Stewart Cousins and Carl Hastie, to claim they don't have funds to support the MTA. BS. You're spending billions of dollars to provide free housing, clothing, healthcare, education, and food to illegal immigrants. You're spending $100 million on taxpayer-funded political campaigns. You are losing $700 million to fare beaters. So there's very simply a lot of things that can be done very quickly to raise $1 billion without this program. And they should do that and do it quick.
If anyone else has a question, I'll ask one other question, which is, have you spoken to the speaker about once you get to the next term, if he made any commitment of bringing this bill up?
We have, we discussed our legislation that would prohibit congestion pricing. There's two pieces that we're all sponsoring. One is prohibition on congestion pricing programs in New York City alone. And then we want one that would prohibit it nationally. Being that New York City is the first in the nation, we're open to whatever our colleagues would support. We've had serious conversations with our colleagues, with the speaker. They know this is important. I think that they will bring it forward to a vote. But we're understanding right now with Senator Schumer there, we've worked very hard to get language in the appropriations for transportation that would prohibit the U.S. Department of Transportation using any federal funds to help implement congestion pricing. We had it in there, and then unfortunately, two people from New York City, Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, fought to take it out. And so we have to wait until we have full control of being able then to pass it, because Republicans see this for what it is, which is a cash grab.
Even with the filibuster?
I believe that there's going to be other mechanisms, as you know. If we need to. I think, again, I agree with Congressman Lawler that this is something that the president can halt, even if it does go into implementation. We can halt it, we can halt it, issue a requirement for a study, and that will stop it. So I think that, and then we have, I think, obviously the legal proceedings that we're a part of. That, I think, the judge should be able to give us a restraining order, so it will not go into effect until the case is overturned. Give us the time necessary.
The last thing I would just add on this is the bond rating agencies are going to have an impact on this as well. With all this uncertainty, with Kathy Hochul's cynical vacillation on this issue, and the fact that there is uncertainty about the future of this once President Trump gets in, I think the MTA is going to have a serious challenge raising $15 billion that it is seeking to borrow through bonding. So there is a lot going on here that I think needs to be addressed. But the fundamental point is that this scam needs to end.